The Last Rose of Summer. Part 1. The Quiet Morning. Harold Greene had never gotten used to the sound of nothing. When you spend nearly 40 years teaching high school history, you learn to live with the noise, the hallway chatter, the scrape of chairs, the bell that always seemed to ring too early or too late. After retirement, that silence moved in slowly, like fog over a field, until one day he realized it had taken up permanent residence in his kitchen. Every morning began the same way. He'd grind his coffee beans by hand, pour boiling water into the old percolator, and wait for the gurgle. He liked the sound of it, the small stubborn rhythm of routine. Sometimes he'd turn on the radio, but mostly he just let the quiet hum around him. He was 71 now, living alone in the small yellow house on Willow Street, the one he and Ellen bought after their second child was born. The paint had faded and the porch creaked, but the rose bushes Ellen planted the summer before she passed were still going strong. Bright red, blooming no matter what the weather brought. It had been 5 years since she died. 5 years of early mornings, crossword puzzles, and trips to the diner on Main Street. He walked there most days, even in winter, using the same worn path along the park fence. The waitress, Carol, always had his coffee ready before he sat down. "Morning, Mr. Greene," she'd say with a smile. "Same as always?" "You know me," he'd reply. "Don't fix what isn't broken." The diner was the sort of place where time barely moved. The men at the counter told the same jokes about fishing and taxes. The clock on the wall ticked a half-second behind. It was comforting, familiar, like the rest of Cedar Falls, Iowa. Nothing too fancy but honest and kind. That Tuesday morning, though, something caught his attention. Carol handed him the newspaper with a grin. "Look who's coming to town," she said. "Margie Lawson. She's doing a reunion concert at the fairgrounds next week. Remember her?" Harold froze mid-sip. Margie Lawson. He hadn't heard that name in nearly 50 years. Part to the songs of yesterday. The memory came back like a flood, bright and painful and sweet all at once. Margie had been the new music teacher at Cedar Falls High in the fall of 1972, the same year Harold started teaching history. She was 25 then, maybe 26, with long auburn hair and a laugh that carried down the hallway. She wore colorful scarves and played the piano like she was telling a secret. Back then, Harold was 27, recently engaged to Ellen, a librarian with kind eyes and a calm voice that steadied him. He loved her deeply. Still did even now, but he remembered the way his heart had skipped the first time Margie walked into the teacher's lounge, humming some tune he didn't know. They worked side by side for years, planning assemblies, chaperoning dances, sitting together at faculty meetings. Nothing inappropriate ever passed between them. But there was something, an awareness, a quiet understanding, a small light flickering where it shouldn't. One spring afternoon, she asked for his help setting up the stage for the school talent show. The gym smelled of varnish and popcorn from the concession stand. He climbed the ladder to hang the banner while she tuned the piano. When he came down, she began to sing softly, a song he'd never heard before. It was "The Last Rose of Summer," a slow, haunting melody about beauty fading with time. When she finished, he said quietly, "That's a sad song." Margie smiled. "It's not sad. It's just true. Everything ends sooner or later. But you sing while you can." He remembered that line for the rest of his life. A week later, she was gone. She'd taken a job at a college out west. No warning, no goodbyes. Only a short note left in his school mailbox. "Thank you for your kindness. Some songs are meant to stay unfinished." He'd read that note 100 times, maybe more. He tucked it inside a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird and kept it in his classroom drawer for decades. When Ellen died and he boxed up his things, the note was still there. He'd almost thrown it away. Almost. Part 3. The Return. The week of the fair. The whole town buzzed with excitement. There hadn't been a big event like that in years. Harold told himself he wasn't going to the concert. He told himself it didn't matter, that it was all ancient history. But when Saturday rolled around, he found himself ironing a shirt and trimming the scruff from his chin. At the fairgrounds, the air smelled of funnel cakes and fried onions. Families sat in folding chairs, kids ran around with balloons, and an old man strummed a guitar near the lemonade stand. When the band took the stage, the crowd hushed. And then she appeared. Margie Lawson. Her hair had gone silver, but her posture was still straight and sure. She wore a simple blue dress and smiled as if she recognized every face in the crowd. When her eyes swept over him, just for a moment, Harold felt something inside him stir that he hadn't felt in years. She began with a cheerful folk tune, her voice warm but worn by time. Halfway through the set, she spoke into the microphone. "You know," she said, "when I was a young teacher here in Cedar Falls, I used to think this town was small. I was wrong. It was full of people who gave big parts of their hearts to others and never asked for them back." Her eyes found his again, and this time there was no mistaking it. He smiled faintly. She smiled back. The next song was, "You Are My Sunshine." The whole crowd joined in. Harold sang too off-key, cracked but steady. For a few minutes the years fell away. It was as if time had folded, bringing the past right to his feet. After the concert, he waited near the refreshment tent. He wasn't sure why, just that it felt like something he was meant to do. When Margie finally came through the crowd, she stopped short, laughing softly. "Well," she said, "if it isn't Mr. Greene." "It's Harold now," he said, smiling. "Retired version." "I'll be," she murmured, shaking her head. "You look good, Harold. You really do." "So do you," he said, though the words came out a little rough. They found a bench near the edge of the fairgrounds, where the lights shimmered on the pond. "How long has it been?" she asked. 49 years, he said after a pause. "Give or take a few." "Lord," she said, laughing. "Half a century. I used to think that was forever." They sat quietly for a while. The band packed up in the distance, and a few fireflies blinked in the dark. Margie turned to him. "I heard about Ellen. I'm sorry." "Thank you," he said softly. "She was the best of me." "I bet she was," Margie said. "You were lucky." "I was," he said. Then, after a moment, he added, "I always wondered, though, what might have happened if you hadn't left." She smiled faintly. "I wondered that too. But we did what we were supposed to. Life had its own plan." He nodded. "It usually does." Before she left, she handed him a folded piece of paper, a program from the concert. On the back, she'd written in neat cursive, "Some songs never end. They just change key. Part for the long evening." Back home, Harold sat on the porch with a glass of iced tea. The air smelled of cut grass and roses. He unfolded the program again, reading the line until it blurred. Then he looked out at Ellen's garden. The moonlight caught the edges of the petals, making them glow faintly like coals in the dark. He thought about Margie, about Ellen, about the kids who used to fill his classroom, and how he used to think his purpose was to make them remember history. Now he realized the real lesson had always been about carrying love forward, even when it couldn't be returned in the way you expected. The heart, he decided, was less like a book and more like a garden. Some things bloom, some wither, and some, like Ellen's roses, keep coming back no matter how many winters pass. The next morning, he drove down to the community center. A sign on the bulletin board read, "Volunteers needed. History talks for seniors." He tore off one of the tabs and tucked it in his pocket. When Carol saw him at the diner later that day, she raised an eyebrow. "You look chipper this morning, Mr. Greene. Got a secret?" He grinned. "Just found a new project, that's all." "Well, it's about time," she said, laughing. "I was starting to think you were married to that crossword puzzle." He chuckled. "Nah, just loyal." That afternoon, he mowed the lawn and trimmed the roses. As he worked, he found himself humming softly. It took him a moment to recognize the tune. "The Last Rose of Summer." The melody wavered, but it didn't fade. When he finished, he stood for a moment, hands on his hips, the sun warm on his back. The house looked the same as always, but something inside him had shifted, quietly, like the world turning toward morning. Part 5. The letter. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived in the mail. The return address read Santa Fe, New Mexico. Inside was a short note on pale blue stationery. "Dear Harold, I wanted to thank you for coming that night. It meant more than you know. I'm heading back to New Mexico soon. Retirement's been kind, but I miss the open sky. If you're ever down this way, I'd love to hear how the roses are doing. Margie." He smiled as he read it, then slipped the letter into the same copy of To Kill a Mockingbird where her first note had rested for half a lifetime. 2 letters now, one for what was, one for what is. He thought of calling her, maybe writing back. But instead he went outside. The roses were in full bloom again, crimson and fragrant. He knelt and trimmed one, placing it in a small vase on the kitchen table beside Ellen's picture. He didn't need to choose between the past and the present anymore. Both were parts of the same long song. Part 6, the new melody. Summer turned into fall, and Harold began his volunteer talks at the community center. The first week, only 3 people showed up. 2 widowers and a woman who fell asleep halfway through his story about the Louisiana Purchase. But by November the room was full. Folks brought cookies and coffee, and some stayed afterward just to talk. He found himself laughing again, telling stories, sharing bits of history and life mixed together. How people always looked for meaning in what came before, and how love in all its forms was just another way of remembering. He even started bringing his guitar, an old thing Ellen had bought him years ago. One afternoon he sang The Last Rose of Summer to the group. His voice cracked halfway through, but no one minded. A few of the ladies even wiped their eyes. Afterward, one of the men said, "You've still got music in you, Harold." Harold smiled. Guess some songs take their time. That night, he walked home as the sun dipped below the trees. The world glowed gold and gentle. The quiet no longer felt like emptiness, it felt like peace. He paused by the roses before heading inside. The last bloom of the season stood alone, small and perfect, trembling in the evening air. He whispered, "Not the last one yet." And for the first time in a long while he believed it. Epilogue. Years later, when his grandchildren asked about his favorite memory, Harold told them this. "Once, a long time ago, I met someone who reminded me how to listen, to music, to people, to life. And I learned that love doesn't have to end to be complete. Sometimes it just changes key." They didn't fully understand, of course, but they smiled and that was enough. And when he passed away, long after that golden summer, they found a small vase on his porch, holding a single red rose.